What if I told you that the reason you keep chasing love, the reason you keep falling for emotionally unavailable men, or the reason you keep giving your heart to people who never meet you halfway, has nothing to do with how lovable you are and everything to do with what you don't yet understand about men emotionally? Most people go their entire lives trying to decode male behavior, trying to make sense of the silence, the mixed signals, the sudden distance after deep connection. But what if it's not about what he's doing at all? What if it's about what you've been taught to believe about love itself? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear might shake the way you see relationships forever. Once you understand what's truly happening inside a man when he pulls away, when he hesitates, when he seems present one moment and cold the next, you'll realize you've been fighting the wrong battle. You'll stop trying to change him, to fix him, or to convince him. You'll stop chasing love altogether, not because you've become bitter, but because you'll finally see the truth. There's a point in this speech where everything will click, where you'll understand why emotional attraction is deeper than chemistry, why men fear vulnerability more than failure, and why the moment you master your own emotions, everything in love begins to change. So, if you've ever wondered why love feels like a constant chase, or why it slips away just when it feels real, don't look away. Because by the time this ends, you'll understand men in a way that makes you unstoppable, and you'll never chase love again. There's a dangerous illusion that almost everyone falls for, the illusion that love has to be earned. We grow up absorbing this belief without realizing it. From a young age, we're taught to behave, to impress, to prove ourselves worthy of attention. We carry that same mentality into our adult relationships, thinking that if we're good enough, patient enough, attractive enough, understanding enough, then maybe, just maybe, we'll be loved in return. But that belief is exactly what keeps so many people chasing love that was never real to begin with. When you understand men emotionally, you begin to see that what most people call love is often just a negotiation for validation. It's not a connection between two souls, it's a trade. I'll give you my attention, my loyalty, my time. We say, if you make me feel valuable, but true love isn't a reward for performance. It's not something you achieve by meeting someone's checklist. It's something that grows in the presence of truth, and truth has no agenda. What keeps so many women trapped in cycles of heartbreak isn't that they love too much. It's that they were never taught to differentiate love from approval. They think if a man pulls away, they did something wrong. They think if he loses interest, they weren't enough. But what if his disinterest isn't about your worth at all? What if it's simply about where he is emotionally capable of meeting you? When you see love through that lens, everything shifts. You stop internalizing rejection as failure. You stop chasing closure from someone who was never emotionally available to begin with. You start to see that you've been trying to earn something that's not supposed to be earned. It's supposed to be mutual. And that realization is liberation. See, emotional understanding isn't about becoming harder. It's about becoming clearer. It's about recognizing the emotional contracts we unconsciously sign when we enter relationships. We say, I'll make you feel safe if you make me feel seen. I'll give you peace if you give me commitment. And when the balance breaks, we panic because we tied our self-worth to the outcome of that deal. But the moment you stop seeking emotional payment from others, you start to discover something revolutionary. That love, in its purest form, begins with you. It's not about finding someone who completes you. It's about learning how to stay complete even when they don't. When you understand men emotionally, you begin to notice patterns most people miss. You notice that a man's attention often isn't love, it's curiosity. His silence isn't always indifference, sometimes it's confusion. His distance isn't always rejection, it's protection. When you can see through those layers, you stop chasing clarity from him because you already have clarity within yourself. And that's where the real shift happens. Because the moment you stop performing for love, you start attracting people who love you for your presence, not your performance. You stop bending yourself to fit someone's comfort zone, and instead you begin to express yourself with honesty and strength. That kind of authenticity is magnetic. It's not loud or demanding, it's grounded. It says, I don't need to chase love because I already live in alignment with it. Here's the paradox: the less you chase love, the more of it you attract. Not because you've learned some secret strategy, but because you've stopped carrying the energy of desperation. People can feel when you're trying to be chosen. They can sense when your worth depends on their validation. And they can also sense when you're no longer auditioning. That's when the dynamic changes entirely, because now you're not looking for someone to complete you, you're looking for someone to match you. Understanding men emotionally also means seeing their own illusion. Many men have been taught that their value comes from what they can provide: money, status, protection, control. They perform too, just in a different costume. And when you meet someone from a place of truth, you free them too. You stop demanding perfection from them and instead invite authenticity. That's where connection is born, not from two people performing roles, but from two people daring to be real. So the next time you catch yourself wondering why he pulled away, why he didn't choose you, or why love feels so hard, pause. Ask yourself if you're really craving him, or if you're craving what being chosen by him means about you. That's the moment of awakening, because once you separate your identity from someone else's affection, you reclaim your power. Love doesn't demand that you chase it. It demands that you become it. And when you do, when you finally understand that love is not a transaction, but a reflection of who you are when you're free from fear, that's when you'll never chase love again. Because real love isn't found by running after someone else. It's found by standing still long enough to see your own worth. That's the truth that changes everything. Most people misunderstand why men pull away. They think it's because he lost interest, or because he found someone else, or because something they did pushed him away. But the truth is far more complex and far more human. When you start to understand men emotionally, you realize that distance is not always a rejection. More often, it's a defense mechanism, one built from years of conditioning, quiet fear, and unspoken expectation. You see, most men are not raised to understand their own emotions. From a young age, they're taught that strength means silence. That tears our weakness, that vulnerability is dangerous, that the world only respects the man who can control himself, not the one who feels deeply. So they learn early how to build walls, how to suppress, how to avoid, how to hide behind the armor of composure. But that armor, while it protects them from pain, also isolates them from connection. And this is where so many relationships get lost. Because when a man begins to feel deeply, when he starts to care, to attach, to become emotionally invested, those buried fears start to surface. He feels exposed, and exposure feels unsafe. So what does he do? He pulls back. He creates distance. Not because he doesn't care, but because caring triggers the very vulnerability he was taught to suppress. Most people misread this. They take it personally. They think he must not love me anymore. But that's not always the case. Sometimes the space a man creates isn't a reflection of his lack of love. It's a reflection of his lack of emotional safety. The irony is that the more he feels for you, the more he may withdraw, because the stakes become higher. He's not just protecting himself from you. He's protecting himself from the possibility of being seen. When you begin to understand this emotional dynamic, something inside you softens. You stop chasing answers that don't exist in words. You stop trying to decode every silence. You start to see the layers, the boy beneath the man, the wounds behind the armor, the fear behind the withdrawal. And that awareness changes the way you show up. Instead of reacting, you start observing. Instead of demanding explanations, you start to understand that his avoidance isn't a lack of interest. It's a lack of tools. Because emotional expression is a language and not everyone was taught how to speak it. Some men were taught to be providers, not feelers. They know how to fix things, not reveal them. They can build empires but struggle to build intimacy. And when their emotions get triggered, they default to the only emotional pattern they've ever known: retreat. This doesn't mean you should tolerate inconsistency or chase after emotional unavailability, but it does mean you begin to interpret behavior with insight instead of insecurity. You learn to say, "This distance is his way of coping, not a reflection of my worth." That mindset doesn't make you weaker, it makes you emotionally intelligent. It gives you control over what you can manage. Your energy, your boundaries, your peace. The moment you stop trying to force emotional closeness and instead focus on creating emotional safety, everything begins to change. Because men don't open up through pressure, they open up through presence. When a man feels that your connection doesn't threaten his identity, when he senses that he can be seen without being judged, he begins to lower the armor. Slowly, carefully, sometimes inconsistently, but genuinely. But let's be honest, not every man is ready for that. Some will never reach the point where they can meet you emotionally, and that's not your responsibility to fix. Understanding men emotionally doesn't mean waiting for them to evolve. It means knowing when to walk away from those who aren't ready to meet you where you are. Compassion doesn't require self-abandonment. You can empathize with someone's wounds without making their healing your burden. What you begin to see is that emotional understanding gives you perspective, not permission. It allows you to recognize that his struggle isn't about you, but it also reminds you that your happiness is. When you meet someone emotionally blocked, you can hold space without losing yourself. You can care without collapsing. You can love without lowering your standards. And that is what it truly means to understand men emotionally, not to excuse their distance, but to interpret it accurately. To see the fear behind the silence and still choose your peace, because the moment you stop reacting to every withdrawal, you reclaim your power. You stop dancing to the rhythm of someone else's fear. You realize that you can understand someone deeply without chasing them desperately. That's what emotional maturity looks like. It's not about decoding him, it's about centering you. Because when you're centered, you become the calm in the storm, not the one swept away by it. And that calm is powerful. It shifts the dynamic completely. Suddenly, he feels something he's never felt before: safety without sacrifice, connection without control, love without pressure. And for the first time, he sees that vulnerability doesn't have to mean weakness. It can mean trust. It can mean truth. It can mean the beginning of something real. But whether he rises to meet that truth or not, that's on him. Your power lies in seeing clearly, feeling deeply, and still standing firm. Because when you understand that a man's distance isn't always about disinterest, but his avoidance of vulnerability, you stop taking it personally, and that clarity is freedom. And the greatest freedom of all is this: the ability to understand someone's pain without letting it dictate your peace. There's a point in every person's life where they realize that chasing love isn't about love at all. It's about trying to fill an emptiness inside. It's that ache you feel when someone pulls away, that panic that whispers, "What's wrong with me?" That feeling doesn't come from love. It comes from emotional hunger, and the danger of emotional hunger is that it blinds you. It makes you mistake attention for affection, intensity for intimacy, and consistency for connection. When you understand men emotionally, you begin to see that chasing love has never been about another person. It's about the void we've carried, the parts of ourselves we've neglected, hoping someone else would heal. That's why you can be strong, intelligent, and self-aware, and still find yourself chasing someone who gives you crumbs. Because somewhere deep down, there's a belief that love is something you must earn, that you must prove yourself worthy of being chosen. But what if I told you the truth, that real love doesn't demand you to chase it? It responds to the level of peace you have within yourself. Most people never realize that emotional self-sufficiency isn't coldness, it's power. It's not about needing no one. It's about not needing someone to define you. When you meet your own emotional needs, when you learn to comfort your own loneliness, to validate your own worth, to create your own sense of peace, something shifts. You begin to detach from the cycle of seeking. You stop mistaking absence for rejection. You stop chasing intensity, and you start craving stability. And that's the moment when you start attracting differently, because love isn't found by searching harder. It's found by becoming calmer. Emotional wholeness has a frequency, one that people can feel even before you speak. When you're centered, grounded, and self-assured, you radiate something magnetic. You no longer move with the energy of desperation. You move with the energy of direction, and that difference changes everything. Chasing love often comes from fear. The fear of being alone, the fear of not being enough, the fear that time is running out. But those fears dissolve the moment you begin to meet yourself, when you realize that solitude isn't punishment, it's preparation. When you discover that peace isn't found in another person's arms. It's found in your own acceptance of who you are. That's when you start to understand that you were never meant to chase love. You were meant to embody it. The reason many people stay stuck in emotionally one-sided relationships is because they confuse connection with chemistry. Chemistry feels like home even when home was chaos. It feels familiar even when it's unhealthy, so you chase it because it reminds you of something you've known before. But once you grow emotionally, you stop chasing familiarity and start seeking alignment. You no longer need the high of unpredictability. You crave the peace of stability. And that's when you stop mistaking drama for passion. When you stop chasing love, you begin to experience something extraordinary. You start attracting people who are at peace with themselves. Because like attracts like. If you're anxious, you attract uncertainty. If you're insecure, you attract validation seekers. But when you're emotionally whole, you attract presence, you attract maturity, you attract people who are not trying to fill a void, but to share a vision. There's a level of inner peace that makes you untouchable by the wrong people. It doesn't mean you'll never feel pain or disappointment again, but it means that no one's behavior can shake your sense of worth. When someone pulls away, you don't crumble. When someone disrespects you, you don't beg. You simply recognize what doesn't align with your peace, and you let it go, not from bitterness, but from clarity. That clarity is what emotional freedom looks like. It's the moment you realize that you don't need love to feel whole. You choose love because you already are whole. You don't chase it to complete yourself. You share it to expand yourself. And that difference turns every relationship from a transaction into a transformation. When you reach that level of emotional maturity, even heartbreak changes. It doesn't destroy you, it refines you. Because you understand that pain isn't punishment, it's information. It teaches you what you were clinging to, what you were avoiding, and what you need to heal. And from that understanding, you no longer fear loss, because you know that nothing truly meant for you will ever require you to betray yourself to keep it. Emotional wholeness doesn't mean you stop loving deeply. It means you stop losing yourself when you do. It means you can be devoted without being dependent. You can care without clinging. You can give without expecting someone else to fix the parts of you you've already healed. That's not detachment. That's self-respect in its highest form. So if you've ever wondered why love seems to slip away the moment you chase it, understand this: you cannot attract what you haven't yet become. The love you seek will meet you at the level of your self-worth. It's not about convincing someone to stay. It's about learning how to stay with yourself. And when you reach that point, when you finally understand that love flows from within you, not toward you, you'll